So welcome everyone. The outline today, we're focusing on the great successes. But really where we're going to start today is by talking about Jesus Christ Superstar. And I think what Jesus Christ Superstar was more of is more of a pop rock, or what we might refer today as glam rock, that it's got more of that pop influence as opposed to maybe a more grassroots Jefferson Airplane kind of 60s pastiche to it, like maybe Godspell did. It's much more based in popular music. And I think that's pretty general for Andrew Lloyd Webber's style. I think we could really just kind of say that a lot of his music really falls into a pop category. So Jesus Christ Superstar is, you know, it's loosely based on the Gospels, and of course, you know, it could also be classified as a rock opera, but it was made into a film, and the film had a lot of reach. I've only seen it live as a stage musical a couple of times. In my mind, automatically when I think about this show, I think about that movie, and how the characters looked, the costumes, so much of it is reminiscent of, to me in my mind, of what really happened in that movie. The original Broadway production debuted in 1971, but it was it actually followed a concept album. And to kind of create a comparison, I want you to think about Pink Floyd's The Wall, which came out in 1979 as an album. And then the movie didn't come out until 81 or 82. It was 2 or 3 years later that the movie even came out. And what is amazing to me about The Wall is that half the music on the album, not half, but a certain percentage of the music on the album wasn't even in the movie. And then there's music in the movie that wasn't even on the album. So I'm watching the movie going, what's going on here? This is, so keep in mind, it's a concept album that then was further developed. So that's kind of what happened with Jesus Christ Superstar. It started out as basically like a concept album. This is the age post, just a few years after Pet Sounds and Sgt. Pepper's. And so composers, rock musicians of all types are creating more of these unified musical experiences. So it premiered then. 70 was the concept album, 71 was Broadway, 72 it appeared on the West End, and then it keeps kind of coming back on Broadway. The film version, which I think is really well done. I mean, it's kind of a low budget type of thing, premiered in 1973. So a little bit later. The evolution of this was kind of a staggered ladder kind of buildup. But both the soundtrack to the original Broadway production and the soundtrack to the film were both big album sellers. And remember that it didn't matter which version you bought, Andrew Lloyd Webber still made money. And he's considered, I believe he's still in the top 10 grossing composers that are still alive today. So both of these turned out to be very big successes, and brought him to audiences that were not familiar with Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. The song I really want to focus on is I Don't Know How to Love Him. And there's a couple things about this song that I think are relatively interesting. It's an aria, if you will, to parallel it with the opera, and it's sung by the character Mary Magdalene. And what I think is quite interesting about this is that her role is for an alto, not a soprano. Many of the heroines in his other musicals are sung by a soprano, namely Sarah Brightman, who was his wife at the time. And this is also a traditional convention in opera, that if we go back to Verdi, all the heroines are sopranos. So I think it's interesting that Andrew Lloyd Webber ranges her part to be an alto. But remember the myth behind Mary Magdalene and what we think her job was, even though there's no mention of that in the Gospels. There's nothing that actually says what she, purportedly did. But it's interesting that stigma, and what he's doing is he's kind of playing on those stigmas a little bit, both with Mary Magdalene and with the character of Judas, who really has a very prominent role in this musical, and who is voiced as a tenor, which is traditionally a hero role, as is Jesus. Jesus and Judas are both tenors. But one kind of does some betraying, but yet he wasn't voiced as a bass, which is traditionally reserved for bad guy characters, antagonists. So when we look at I Don't Know How to Love Him, the first thing that comes to mind is that where it is voiced, that this is doesn't contain anything related to that soprano range, which can also be associated with purity. So he's really telling us something about this character right off the bat. If we look at I Don't Know How to Love Him, the chords are relatively straightforward. That is only the third chord. The opening exchange between the first two chords, it's the 1 chord and the 4 chord, which is also a plagal cadence. Amen. But it's also a chord progression that is used in a lot of ballads. If we look at Elton John, right? Rocket Man's a 1/4, Your Song. So that use of the 1/4 chord, that's used in a lot of love songs. I Don't Know How to Love Him, those are the 2 chords we have. 4 chord. Then back to the 4 chord again. Now here's the 5 chord. So the construction of this particular piece is very simple. It's very kind of straightforward. It takes place in the film like kind of around a campfire, and sunset's going down, and it's very intimate. And if we look at the construction of the melody, we have a lot of stepwise notes that are right next to each other. Here's the first leap. Stepwise notes. Tiny leap. Big leap. Stepwise again. Leap down. Leap up. Stepwise. And of course, one of the reasons to do intervals like that, stepwise related intervals, is singability. The ability to kind of easily sing this. This is a tune all of us can sing. It's in a comfortable range. The notes are very close to one another. There's not a lot of leaps. You've only got to learn like a few of the leaps or whatever. So the way it's constructed really is based on simplicity. And of course, this also reflects Mary Magdalene's love, that she is in love with him. When you break it down, her love is very simple. The conflict comes in the middle. Should I bring him down? Should I scream and shout? Should I speak of love? Should I let my feelings out? And so the conflict is not in the music. It's in her mind. And remember that music is a way of communicating ideas, even if they're in conflict with what's going on. Mozart did this. He'd have scenes where people are like, oh, I don't really love you, but they're singing like in thirds, and they're totally united. And the music is saying they do love each other, even though in words we're saying we don't. So what's interesting is the conflict here is in her mind and the ideas of what's going on. But the reality of it is that her love is simple. It's straightforward. And the way that this song is used to kind of help paint that character, I think, is brilliant. We think about simple music. We think, oh, music has to be complicated to be good. That's not really the case. It's really much more difficult to write something that's good, that's simple.